Well, the 2025 MLB regular season is come and gone. And with that came some really bad takes of mine. So before we really get started, I'm going to be predicting the playoffs. Let's go over some of my really bad takes I had before the season started. So if you remember, I made a video and I was giving my MLB predictions for the season. Yeah, a lot of them were really, really bad. We'll start with the National League because it's not as bad. I had the New York Mets finishing in first place. Not great. Not great. And then I had the Phillies finishing in second, Braves in third, Nationals in fourth, Marlins in fifth. Yeah, not my best take, but I promise you it gets much worse. Ironically enough, I think the NL Central is as good as it gets for me. Because I had the Brew Crew actually finishing in first place. I think this is one of 2 division winners I got correct. Maybe 3. But yeah, I had them finishing in first with the Reds in second and the Cubs in third. Honestly, I had the 3 playoff teams at the top of the division. I can't be too mad. And then I had the Cardinals and Pirates in fifth. Unfortunately, the Pirates stink. Dodgers, I had finishing first place in the NL West, with the Arizona Diamondbacks in second place. Look, they died this year, alright? I couldn't predict that. Then I had the Padres in third, Giants in fourth, and then I, of course, had the Rockies in fifth. And the AL East is probably the worst division I had, I'm gonna be honest. I had the Baltimore Orioles finishing in first place, with the New York Yankees in second, the Toronto Blue Jays in third, with the Rays in fourth, and the Boston Bo Boobs in fifth. Yeah, I'm not proud. In the AL Central, I had the Cleveland Guardians finishing in first, with the Twins in second, the Royals in third, the Tigers in fourth, because I said I thought that the end of last year was a fluke. I was wrong, okay? I'm man enough to admit when I'm wrong, and I was wrong. I apologize, Tigers. And then I had the White Sox finishing in fifth. In the AL West, the final division, I had the Texas Rangers finishing in first place. Yeah, they missed the playoffs and fired their manager. Not a good take. I had the Astros finishing in second. I mean, I was right. I thought they'd make the playoffs, but I was right. Seattle Mariners, they finished in third, is what I had them as. And then the Oakland Athletics and the Angels, because yes, they are still Oakland. If you ask me, that's where they should still be. I had them finishing in fourth and fifth. So hopefully you got a chuckle out of those. But now let's actually get into what you clicked on this video for. The playoff predictions. We'll start with the AL wildcard games, starting with the Detroit Tigers versus the Cleveland Guardians. Woof. Woof, Tigers. Look, I'm going to be honest. I have a really hard time seeing the Tigers winning this series. I really do. And the only reason I say that is because Cleveland, right now, they're the hottest team in baseball. They're the hottest team in baseball. I mean, with the way they ended the year and how cold Detroit has been, I have a hard time picking the Tigers. I think Tarek Skubal might be able to win them a game, but they got to win 2, and I don't see how they get 2 right now. With how they've been playing this past month, I can't see it. So I'm going to go with the Guardians. Next, we've got the Boston Bo Boobs. If you know me long enough, you know why I call them that. Versus the New York Yankees. Honestly, I'm going to go with the Boston Bo Boobs here. And I'm going with the Bo Boobs because, for one, the Bo Boobs have really dominated the Yankees for most of this year. I don't know how. I don't know why. But another reason I'm going with them is because Aaron Judge in the playoffs in his career, hasn't done too great. I think he's batting like 205 in the playoffs, something like that. On top of that, I think Garrett Crochet should be able to win this team a game. And Boston's bullpen has been revitalized somehow, some way. So, in all honesty, I really see Boston as a boom or bust team heading into the postseason. I think they're going to boom here. I think that they're going to get the series win. Now, maybe that's a bit of bias because I hate the Yankees, and I am rooting for the Boboobs. But aside from that, I do think the Boboobs are talented enough to get the win here. Next, we'll go on to the NL Wildcards versus the Cincinnati Reds in the LA Dodgers. Look, I have a hard time picking the Reds here. I'm going to be rooting for them as much as it pains me wearing this. As much as it pains me, I'm a professional Dodgers hater. I hate the LA Dodgers. But I just don't see a way. I don't see a way the Reds win this series. I mean, maybe Hunter Green can win them a game, maybe, but he doesn't tend to pitch well against the Dodgers, and again, most pitchers don't. I don't know. I'm going to go with the Dodgers here. I just think that they're a better team. I mean, simple as that. And then for the last wild card matchup, you've got the San Diego Padres versus the Chicago Cubs. And for this matchup, I'm going to go with the Padres. I don't feel great about it, but I'm going with the Padres for a couple reasons. One, I hate the Chicago Cubs. I do, I'm sorry. I hate the Chicago Cubs. But that's not the main reason. Main reason I'm going with them is that the Cubs just have not been the same since the All-Star break. They have not been the same since the All-Star break. And I just don't trust them. I have a hard time trusting them right now. You know, I know they have injuries. I know Horton is hurt. He's not going to be in the series. I'm going to go with the Padres here. So if everything goes the way I think it will, we have the Cleveland Guardians versus the Seattle Mariners, Boston Boboos versus the Toronto Blue Jays, the LA Dodgers versus the Philadelphia Phillies, and the San Diego Padres versus the Milwaukee Brewers. So let's continue on. We'll go with the Cleveland Guardians versus the Seattle Mariners. I had a hard time picking this. I really, really did. But I ultimately went with Seattle. And I went with Seattle because I think they're more consistent than Cleveland, if that makes sense. Over the past month, Cleveland has been the more consistent team, but over the year, it's been Seattle. And I also really like what Seattle did at the deadline. I think they filled a lot of their needs. They needed left-handed pitching really badly. They went out and did just that. And I just have a feeling Seattle is going to win this series. Now, chances are I'll probably be wrong, and Seattle will probably disappoint their fans once again. But I'm going to be rooting for them. I am. Because that team has gone through so much pain and misery, and they deserve a championship. But I'm going with the Mariners. Do I feel confident about it? God, no, but I'm still doing it. Next, you've got the Boston Boboobs versus the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm going with the Boboobs here in this series. I said earlier that I think the Boboobs are boomer bust, and by that, I mean I think they're either going to make it to the ALCS or they're just going to fall flat in the wild card. And I think that's going to be the case here. Toronto is dealing with some injuries right now, I know that. And as I said, Boston's bullpen has been really good for whatever reason. And Aroldis Chapman has been probably the best reliever in baseball this year. So I really have a hard time picking against the Boboobs for that reason. On top of that, it's the Blue Jays. You can't trust the Blue Jays in the playoffs. I've seen them play in the playoffs. They tend to screw up. They tend to screw up. I don't know why. They just, ugh. They're such a frustrating team to deal with. They really are. I'm going to go with the Bo Boobs here in this one. And this is a pick I feel pretty confident about. That's if, Bo Boobs make it to this point. Next, we've got the LA Dodgers versus the Philadelphia Phillies. I don't know, man. I don't know where... I'm still somewhat undecided on this, because I think this is going to be a really good series. But I'm ultimately going to go with Philly, and I'm going to go with Philly for a few reasons. As I said earlier, I'm a professional Dodgers hater. I hate the Dodgers. But outside of that, Phillies, they have a few lefties. Now, I do think that the absence of Zach Wheeler is really going to sting. I really think it's going to sting. But I just think Phillies bats, Kyle Schwarber is still a menace. Of course, you still got Bryce Harper and a bunch of other guys. I don't know. Dodgers have a lot of lefties in the lineup. I know that Phillies have a lot of lefties in the rotation, and I think that maybe that'll combat it a little bit. The Phillies are going to be the home team for this series, so I'm going to go with the Phillies. I don't feel great about it. I very well could see the Dodgers winning this and making me sad, but I'm going to go with the Phillies. Moving on, you've got the San Diego Padres versus the Milwaukee Brewers. Man, how times have changed. Remember at the start of the season when the Brewers were like 0-5, they were giving up a ton of runs, and torpedo bats were all the rage? Good times. Yeah, the Milwaukee Brew Crew are probably the best team in baseball heading into the postseason, in all honesty. And it's because of their pitching. I said this at the start of the season. I said that I know they've gotten rid of a lot of pitchers, but I've seen the Brew Crew do this a bunch, where they have pitchers that they get rid of, and then they just bring up some random guy, and then he ends up being a stud. That's exactly what's happened. The Brew Crew has a really good rotation, and their bats are making do. They're doing well. Christian Yelich, he's been pretty efficient this season for the most part. However, I've seen the Brewers in the playoffs before. I've seen the Brewers play in the playoffs. And they're going to disappoint. Now, I'm not saying it'll be immediately. But I'm saying it'll be immediately. Yeah, the Padres are winning this series. And again, maybe it's bias, because, if I'm not happy in the NL Central, nobody can be happy in the NL Central. But, I don't know, man. I think the Padres are really good. I think think their bats are very efficient. I like their starting rotation a lot. I think that if the Padres bullpen can hold it down, I think they have a good chance to go far. Moving on. Seattle Mariners versus the Boston Bo Boobs. This is if everything I say comes true. And then you would have the Phillies and the Padres in the NL. I'm going to go with Seattle to win this series. I don't know, man. I think, the problem for Seattle in the past has been their bats. And admittedly, that's still probably what the issue is. But I think that their starting rotation is good enough to where they may not need to score a lot of runs. And I think, as a result, it'll be hard for the Bo Boobs to handle. I think it'll be hard for them to figure out that rotation. And so I'm going to go with the Seattle Mariners here in this one. And in the National League, I'm going to go with the Phillies to beat the Padres. As I said, Phillies, very good team. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Padres were to win this series, if it were to happen. Just because, as I said, Phillies, they're not entirely healthy. But of course, you can say that for any team, in all fairness. But I don't know. I just think the Phillies have a good chance, man. In the World Series, the Seattle Mariners versus the Philadelphia Phillies. I went back and forth on this. But ultimately, I decided to give it to the team that I think is healthier and has better rotation. I'm going to go with the Seattle Mariners. And I'm going to go with the Mariners because, as I said, I trust their rotation, they're healthier, and I think their bats can figure out this mainly lefty rotation from Phillies. Now, I'll probably be wrong, and Seattle will probably disappoint their fans once again, as I said earlier, but for now, I have the Seattle Mariners going to the World Series, winning it all. Postseason MVP, Julio Rodriguez, because why not? And because I'm a Pirates fan, I get disappointed when I see Caleb Ferguson and Bailey Falter win the World Series. I mean, it's just par for the course. Oh well. Those are my predictions. I'll probably be wrong, and then we'll laugh together. Postseason baseball is great.